All right, welcome to week 8, module 8 of the paraeducator training course. This week we're going to talk about behavior management. We've mentioned it several weeks ago, and I said that we would come back to it, and here we are. The first task to do for this module, of course, is to take the pre-test. So why don't you head on over to Canvas at this time if you haven't yet. If you haven't already, and take care of that. It will help prepare your mind for the topics that'll be under discussion today. Okay. We got several parts to this module's lectures. Part 1 is philosophy of behavior management. Look at all the smiling kids. It looks like these kids have never had a behavior problem, right? No way. No way. I'm sure they have. Purpose and philosophy of behavior management. The overall purpose of behavior management is to aid students, to help students in displaying behaviors that are conducive to learning. In other words, helpful to instruction. The goal of positive behavior management should be to teach and encourage academic and social behaviors that are appropriate for the classroom situation. Okay, so here we are hearing what our targets ought to be. What's the relationship between behavior and learning? I think we can all appreciate that there is such a relationship. Behavior is a concern because it's so closely related to effective learning from both the students and the teachers' perspectives. When a classroom is free of disturbances, I know it's hardly ever free of disturbances, but when disturbances are kept to a minimum, students can use classroom time for learning activities rather than non-learning activities. Learning occurs in classrooms where the time allotted for instruction, the time that we have been given for teaching, is used for teaching. This is, I must say, this was my biggest complaint about teaching high school. Not that I wouldn't give it another shot someday, but I spent probably 90% of the time doing what I considered to be police work and about 10% of the time doing teaching. That's my recollection as a sophomore teacher. If I had remained a high school teacher, I chose not to. If I had remained a high school teacher, I would have developed better strategies because part of that was on me. Part of that was that I had very difficult classes. But let's talk about the word learning. So here comes the college word of the day. All right. So everyone knows the word learning already, I know. But we don't usually sit around and think about, what does learning mean to me? Or what does the word learning mean? Of course, there are lots of definitions, many, many different definitions. But here's one, and it's one that I like. Someone else taught me this one. Learning. Okay, so you might say, that's a pretty general definition. Don't I make memories all the time? Whenever I'm walking around in my life, aren't I making memories? Yes, of course. And the idea behind this definition is that every time you do that, it adds to your experience, it adds to your sort of permanent record, your memory, and it influences the decisions that you make next. All of the decisions that you make after gathering these data are based on those data, aren't they? So whenever a new memory is formed, the point behind this in terms of the classroom is that we are trying to form the desired memories, right? We want students to remember times tables. We want students to remember grammar rules, all these kinds of things. So if you go to college, if you go to grad school, whether it's your first, second, or third time, I went 3 times myself. So there's, folks, there's no shame in starting over. You always learn something new when you start over. You are probably going to encounter this definition and other definitions. This is a education science definition. It's not a psychology definition, and it's not a cognitive science definition, but it's one that we use in education. All right. So for today's college word du jour, we took a really common word and complexified it. So sometimes that's what we do. That's what anyone does. I mean, you take a word that you already know and you give it a new purpose. When time is used interacting with students whose behaviors are not focused on the lesson, my police work, less time is available to learn. So we want to punch up the amount of time that's available for learning and minimize the amount of time that's spent doing non-learning activities. One student's behavior can use up other students' learning time by distracting them or by taking the teachers' and paraeducators' time away from the lesson. So remember, if we go back to FAPE, the statute known as FAPE, we know that all students have the right to an education, to a free, meaning no cost, and appropriate, meaning someone's idea of appropriate education. Other students don't have the right to take that from them. And you might think that my view is a little bit of a cynical one, but when students are, misbehaving to the degree that they are taking up a lot of class time, they are interfering with other students' learning. That's my analysis of that. And I believe that they patently don't have the right to take someone else's education away from them. So you have to develop really good behavior management strategies. You have to work as hard as the students do at this, right? To make it work out. When the entire class's behavior meets expectations, learning can be maximized. Okay. Now, it sounds like we're talking about absolutes here. It sounds like I'm suggesting that 100% of the people will behave at some point in time. And we know that people are people, and that's not necessarily going to be the case. But we shoot for 100. If we get 90, that's wonderful. All right. Teaching goals. Teachers' goals. Here is our watchword, appropriate again. Appropriate is an evaluation, right? When we say things like should or ought to, or we use adjectives like appropriate, we are evaluating something, evaluating its quality. Teacher's goal in behavior management is to have appropriate behavior displayed by students because it, number one, creates a safe learning environment for all. It also encourages learning by eliminating distractions. Third, it is respectful to other students. This is what I was talking about earlier, as well as to staff. Fourth, it facilitates the organization of the classroom, so learning time is efficient. And fifth, it increases time available to interact with academic subjects. At the beginning, we started by talking about the philosophy. The philosophy of behavior management is that appropriate behaviors can be taught just as reading or math can be taught. It's kind of a way of socializing people to a classroom. A classroom is an episteme. We can talk about that. Whether teaching an academic subject or behavior, the objective for the instruction should be clear. Okay, we keep coming back to that point. The objective for the instruction should be clear. Got to have goals. But let's return to the first paragraph here. Appropriate behaviors can be taught just as reading or math can be taught. All right. So when you go down to family Mexican restaurant, right? Whatever the name of the restaurant might be. Imagine you're going to a family Mexican restaurant. It's not a bar. It's not a, cantina. It's a place where families go to eat dinner. You know what the rules are, right? Everybody knows the rules. You walk inside, somebody says, hi, I'll get you to a seat. You go, your family goes to a seat. somebody brings you some chips and salsa, probably. You eat those while you're looking at your menu. Server comes again, you order your food, you eat your food, you pay for your food, and you go home. While you're there, you're probably not playing a guitar, right? Unless you're a mariachi. You're probably not, you don't have any of your pets with you, right? You did not bring your cat. You know, while you're there, you are sitting on the seats, you're not sitting on the table, right? Because you know what the social contract requires of you. So we got a daily double today, folks, because we're going to do college word du jour number 2. And this is actually not a new one for this course, but I'm using it in a new way. So along a few weeks ago, a few modules ago, we talked about epistemology. And epistemology, we said, was making meaning. The practice of making meaning. Okay. And I'm just using this as an example because it's the only example I can think of right now. People always want to make meaning. So recently, a country invaded another country. I know that happens every day on this planet, but a country invaded another country and people wanted to know why. They said, why is this happening? Because we want to make meaning out of everything, right? And so people said, oh, well, you know, the country that was invaded, it has a lot of grains, it has a lot of farmland, and the other country has less farmland. Oh, now it makes sense, right? And this is just, I'm just demonstrating our, the human tendency to try to make meaning out of everything. That was just an example, okay? We make meaning out of everything. And episteme, okay, epistemology is a noun. Here's a different noun. Trust me, if you go into learning about teaching at the graduate level, you will be hearing these words. You'll already know them. All right, episteme, an instance. Of meaning making. There we go. Episteme is an instance of meaning making, or a demonstration of meaning making. Okay, so when we do a job interview, right? You go to that job interview, that is an episteme. And it has rules, right? It's like a contract. We know that we behave this way, the other person behaves this way. We know what the rules are. Kids don't know the rules. They do not understand the frame of this episteme for the classroom. They don't know it yet because you don't come out of your mother knowing this stuff, right? You have to learn it, just like you have to learn math or English or whatever. So it is acquainting them with the episteme, what makes sense at a classroom level, what sorts of behaviors make sense at a classroom level. It is acquainting them with this episteme that is something that we are often expected to teach kind of implicitly. Don't you know this, right? But actually it needs to be taught explicitly. We have to say, this is how people behave here. These other behaviors are not how people behave here. Right? How many times do you have to say that to your kids, your own kids, every day? You're making meaning all the time, you know, even if you don't need to recognize it in the moment. You are doing epistemology every single day. All right. Promise that's the last college word today. All right. So here's a different way of saying what I just described. The expectations for behavior should be explained thoroughly. Opportunities to practice positive behaviors, yes, need to be created. Corrective feedback on behavior allows students to practice behaviors with guidance from an adult. All right, well, how does this benefit the students? I promise it does. I promise it does. Students benefit from classrooms where behavior management is used to promote positive behaviors and encourage learning. Some of these benefits include, one, the opportunity to learn, practice, and develop social skills. Being what they call socialized to the classroom is another way of saying learning the episteme of the classroom. Number two, experiences with group and cooperative activities. And three, the positive experience of getting along with teachers and other students. When we get along with teachers and students at a young age, it kind of primes us to get along with more of them later. Four, learning behavioral expectations in different situations. Okay, we've got this classroom. You know, maybe you're in kindergarten and in your classroom you've got a rug, and everybody gathers and sits on the rug at a certain point in the day. And then in first grade, no rug. Huh? What? Where's my rug? What do I do? We need to learn what the expectations are there. Number five, meeting the goal of following procedures developed for effective learning. When students meet goals and we let them know that they meet the goal, and we let them know that that was a positive behavior, it encourages them to do the same in the future. Yeah. All right, what about teachers' goals? A little more on that. Paraeducators, IAs, can play a major role in facilitating a supervising teacher's behavior management plan. Yeah, we really do. Coordination of the paraeducator's role and the teacher's role is necessary for behavior management plans to be effective. So just like anything else in the classroom, we need to have coordinated with our classroom teacher regarding behavior management before we start sort of making our own policies, like, well, this is how I do it at home, this is what I know, or this is what my parents did, or what have you. Instead, we do whatever the classroom teacher recommends for us. Coordination of the paraeducator's role, I just said that, is necessary. All right, the smiling kids again. I bet these kids have never gotten in trouble. No way. Part two, planning and coordinating behavior management. Okay, somebody's getting talked to across the room, and see what's going on here is all the other students are looking at that person. The teacher is speaking to that kid. We don't know, can't really tell from her face. We don't know if she's saying, that's, excuse me, sir, that's a good behavior, or pardon me, but that's not a good behavior. But whatever it is, he's got an audience, right? All of the other kids are looking. These are all models, but it's an idealized classroom, and all the other students are looking at the kid. Let's examine how paraeducators and teachers can plan together in managing student behaviors. I'm sure your classroom teacher is going to tell you, don't create this situation. Don't allow this situation to be the one that you find yourself in, because it creates a lot of drama, and it creates a lot of opportunities for mistrust. Yeah, especially if you allow yourself to be bothered excessively by a behavior. So let's talk about some other ways. The classroom teacher is responsible for making major decisions. Okay, they are holding all the keys. They create a positive classroom environment. Writing behavior plans, carrying out interventions, and establishing classroom rules and procedures. This is great for us because as long as we have coordinated with the teacher and we do what the teacher has asked of us in the classroom, then if there are questions later, say a situation arises with a particular student, the teacher will ask you, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And if you're able to honestly say yes, then you have done your duty. Paraeducator roles include demonstrating, explaining, modeling, and reinforcing appropriate behavior and skills. And often Additional roles include observing, monitoring, and recording students' behaviors in carrying out a particular behavior management plan. There should be an apostrophe right here. Naughty, naughty. My S is not behaving. That's my fault. See, we're both involved in this. Teachers and paras are equally vital in working together on behalf of students. This is advocacy. Instructional assistants may observe a number of behaviors that the supervising teacher does not see in the classroom, in the lunchroom, the playground, and the halls. So yes, absolutely true. And the teacher may ask us things about how students' behavior is in these different venues, different milieu. Therefore, it's the para's responsibility to bring to the teacher's attention any concerns about the behaviors of students they observe. Yeah. Paraeducators complement the role of the teacher in a whole bunch of ways, a variety of ways. They can respond immediately to students. Students with questions or students having a behavior problem. They can assist in working with smaller groups and individual activities. That's most of what we'll do, ideally. They can increase monitoring, and not just monitoring in terms of watching out for non-desired behaviors, but also monitoring in terms of gauging student progress. And we've talked about different worksheets that we can use for that previously. We can provide frequent attention to the students. We are a value-added aspect of students' education. We can help prevent problems and deal with them quickly when they arise. This is really valuable to teachers. Yeah, other people have said this to you before, but I'm so glad that you have made the decision to become a paraeducator, because the teachers really need you. Okay, behavior management plans. Dun, dun, dun. It's not as scary as it sounds. BMPs are developed by either the classroom teacher or a team of school personnel. In some cases, paraeducators' input may be requested. So developing a BMP is a little bit like developing an IEP, but it has to do specifically with a child's conduct. Behavior management plans assist the teacher and para to proactively and effectively deal with behavior. Plan may be carried out by the paraeducator and or the supervising teacher. So when might this come up? There are certain mechanisms in place for dealing with behavior at a school level. So, we're all familiar with, okay, so-and-so does this, they do something crazy in class, they pull out a phone, or they have some firecrackers with them, or whatever it might be, something slightly above your spoke out of turn, right? What do you get? You get detention, right? So that's how the vice principal usually will set a policy on that at the school level, in concert with the other stakeholders. But there are a number of students for whom that just doesn't work. And behaviors like that are going to repeat day in and day out. You can't give them detention every day. And that's the only thing that teachers really have. I'm talking about older students, of course. So these behavior management plans are a way of sort of engaging with those behaviors and redirecting students towards behaviors that are going to be more helpful to them for their futures. BMPs help in communicating behavioral expectations to individual students or to an entire classroom, it's possible, as well as the consequences for achieving the goal or objective. Okay, we use the word consequences here in a positive light. So we often hear in an educational context, say in a middle school, elementary school, we hear the word consequences used this way. You can have positive consequences, you can have negative consequences. It'll come up. Just like we talked about learning earlier, this word is sort of repurposed at the at educational agencies. Right, BMPs help paraeducators and teachers remain consistent. Consistency is our goal. The use of a BMP helps to establish the expectations of both paraeducators and the supervising teacher. It allows for frequent feedback regarding the effectiveness of the management strategies being employed, right? And this is one of the things that makes them effective. You've got a weekly check-in or a daily check-in with someone, right? It assists in documentation of student or class progress and provides guidelines for interacting with students. This is the bit that's very helpful with us, to us, because we may need to know something like student does not react well to a raised voice, right? It may be that we need to speak in softer tones with this person, especially when we want to do anything except speak in softer tones, right? I have seen this at work. I've seen teachers do just what I'm talking about, and with students with behavior management plans, and I've seen it function well. On Canvas, on the week 8 module, I should say, although it says week 7 here, we have a DLC for this module, and it's a mock behavior management plan that we will work on at some point in this course. There we go. Thank you for making it to the end of module 8, week 8, day 1 with me. I'll see you soon for day 2.